Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm KandyCorpse, you can call me Kay, and today's going to be another r/let's not meet. This first story is actually an update to one that I had done previously. So the story is called Someone is Watching Me, posted by user BrilliantBex1992, and this is the second update. So basically in the first update, someone was standing outside her window. There was a development kind of going on next door. It used to be a huge field, and initially she didn't see anything, but the motion light would keep going off, and then eventually she did see something. She saw like the silhouette of a man. She told her parents. They thought she was maybe being ridiculous. But eventually she did call the police, and so that became kind of like a whole thing. But in the previous update, so this is the second update. In the first one, I think it said a friend was over and saw a man standing near their garage or something like that, and they just ignored it. Later heard a loud banging, and this guy had like a crowbar and was trying to break in. And their door to their garage, I think she said, was unlocked or doesn't lock. I don't know exactly, but there was a door from the garage into the house. It was connected. So she called the police, and the guy kept going until the police arrived. So like when the guy saw and heard the sirens, he hauled ass and got out of there. So people did leave a few things, like, you know, they've seen lights on in the house. So she told the contractor, and the contractor basically told her to fuck off. I don't know if he just like didn't believe her or what it was, because I think she said she like knew the guy or like knew someone who knew him. So the whole thing was very weird, but we did get another update. I had looked previously and didn't see one, but obviously I didn't look hard enough because the update was like literally a couple days later. So whatever I was looking for, I obviously was not looking hard enough. Update 2, Someone is Watching Me. I'm not even sure if this is relevant to my previous posts about the person watching me through my window and banging on my garage with a crowbar, but I'm worried that everything may be connected somehow. A week ago from this Saturday, this was posted about 20 days ago. A week ago from this Saturday, I was supposed to meet with a man who had contacted me through social media with friends in common. It wasn't an obvious date, more like a pre-date. We didn't get there, though, as he randomly blocked me out of nowhere and then unblocked me and apologized, thinking everything was normal and we were hanging out. When I didn't respond at all, seeing some major red flags in his behavior, he reached out to tell me I had thin skin for not just going along with it and meeting him in a debatably isolated place. I brushed it off, only to get a message from a different man, seemingly unconnected, blatantly asking for a date exactly a week later. I asked him up front and kind of rudely why he'd reached out and wanted to date me, but he was seemingly unfazed. We seemed to have a lot of common, and we were supposed to meet up. Here's where it gets weird. I asked him if we should meet at 6 in a particular spot. He saw it, but said nothing. I figured since he was at work, he was busy, but then nothing all day. And when I checked in again, he saw it after we were supposed to meet, and still nothing. He pursued me, just as the last guy, but this time made me more nervous because it feels like he wanted to make sure I was at a certain place at a certain time. For the record, it is a public place, but also very dark in the parking lot and somewhat rural. I didn't think much of this at first, as it's a place that I've gone all my life, but it feels like something's going on here. These two men were reaching out through a dating app. I'm not on any yet, as I wasn't sure about being ready to date again and wanted to let things happen/not happen organically. They found me through social media. Oh, it says they were not reaching out through a dating app. I don't know why I skipped that word. Maybe it's not connected, but commenters on the other posts pointed out how easy it is to find someone's address through socials, and the last two men reaching out in such a way and acting in such a way in such close time makes me wonder. Maybe my window was watching garage door, maybe my window, and watching and garage door banger are separate. Hell, maybe even these two are two separate people. I'm not sure what's scarier, but I'm thinking it's scarier if all of this somehow connected as my gut is telling me. I just don't believe in coincidences, and all of these things happening at the same time is so suspicious to me. I'll just continue going to my gun handling safety courses, and I start Muay Thai next month, so there's that. Hopefully this wasn't a boring update. I really feel bad feeling about these. I really have a bad feeling about these two guys. The wording was a little weird. And even if they aren't connected, I hope we don't meet. Edit to add, I forgot to add that as many helpful and worried commenters suggested, we have added 4 exterior cameras. Bad news, if you didn't see it in one of my comments on the previous post, my mom lost her keys. Oh my God. They have an AirTag and police have made several attempts to retrieve them unsuccessfully. We don't always know the location. We have all been keeping bedroom doors locked and there's no extra keys in the main areas to those bedrooms, but it's still very scary. Having the whole house rekeyed, and my mom has been using my dad's car since she goes to the neighborhood they're in for work. So yay, on top of these weird anxiety-inducing incidents, someone out there also has keys to my house. Oh my God. Bro, it was already so scary with all the stuff that OP had going on. Like I had mentioned, and they had mentioned someone attempting to break in, someone watching them through their window, banging on their door with a freaking crowbar. Like, if you want to kind of keep up with this, like I said, I user right here, and it's in Let's Not Meet, titled Someone Is Watching Me. That's insane. This next story is by Girl Veteran. You see how much I love you. When I first got out of the Army, I was in a relationship with a guy in 3rd Ranger Battalion. That's how I would say it, right? I think so. Let's call him Jim Reedus. He and I had an apartment together, and I thought I loved him, so instead of going back to my home in Nebraska, I stayed in Columbus, Georgia. Our relationship started out with him being what I thought was protective over me. Eventually, though I was very attractive at the time, I had very low self-esteem because of an assault experience I experienced while I was living in the barracks and the bullying I endured afterwards. Things moved very quickly. In fact, we were inseparable from the night we met. Anytime another man looked at me, he would get very confrontational towards the guy. I felt safe and protected by this. It made me feel special. I thought he must really value me if he would get so upset by a guy looking my way, at first. Soon, we would be out at a bar, and he would get hammered every single time and act very nasty towards me if he thought I was looking at another guy. This would cause bitter fights, and I would always end up in a fetal position in bed, sobbing, but still, I stayed. The next day, he would always apologize, making excuses about it being because he was so drunk, but then he would proceed to explain to me what I had done wrong. It wasn't long before I found myself totally isolated from my friends and family because he was so insecure. He made me take all my cell phone calls on speakerphone. My family begged me to leave, but I was afraid I couldn't get by on my own. Then one night we came home from the bar, in the usual fashion, him screaming in my face and me sobbing. I told him I was gonna get a room at a motel, and he lost his mind. He yanked the keys out of the ignition and threw them into the wood line. He then got out of the car and proceeded to kick in the front quarter panel of my car. He used so much force that the hinges of the passenger door were bent. I told the insurance company it was a hit and run, or I never would have been able to get the damage fixed. He screamed at me to get inside the apartment, but I couldn't unlock the door without my keys, which he blamed me for. He then grabbed me and started shoving me into the front door, first by my shoulders, then with his hands around my throat, screaming, "Can't you see how much I love you?" I rasped, "No, I can't." He let go and fell to the ground in a heap. and I fell to the ground. That night, I'd finally had enough. I was finally so angry that I couldn't feel afraid anymore. That morning, while he was sleeping it off, I began to make plans. I started by telling him he had to leave and move back into the barracks. When he refused, I had to get his chain of command involved to make him leave the apartment and go back to live in the barracks on someone's couch in the street, just as long as it wasn't with me. He stalked me mercilessly. I filed for an order of protection, but he bullied me into dropping it. I knew I would never be free from him if I stayed, so my parents sent me some money via Western Union. This is back in 2002. And I rented a Penske truck and trailer, got help from my neighbor guy, friends, to load it up as soon as the sun set, and I brought it from where I had hidden it. My best chance was to leave under the cover of darkness. I was really sick that night. I was running a fever of 103, but I knew it had to be then. I couldn't wait. Let me see, where was I? I was really sick that night, running a fever of 103 degrees, but I knew it had to be then. It couldn't wait. I just told myself that I had to get out of the city limits, and then I could pull over and sleep a bit. I figured I would just drive as much as I could, then take a rest when I couldn't push any harder. I put my puppy in the cab of the truck with me, towed my car behind the truck, and left. I don't know how, except through divine intervention, but somehow I managed to drive nonstop from Fort Benning, Georgia, to my parents' home in rural Nebraska. I stopped only for fuel, at which time I would feed, water, and walk my little dog, Scruffy, use the facilities, and get what food and drink I could afford on my meager budget. I drove 14 hours and pulled into my parents' driveway around 10 a.m. Central Time. I crashed on their old couch and slept for nearly 24 hours straight. I still hope for nothing but pain and suffering for him. He turned me onto pills, then coke, then crack, all while he was on active duty. He was a scumbag of a soldier and a man. He reached out to me on social media a couple years ago. I told him what a piece of steaming shit he was, and then I told him to rot in hell. It felt amazing, even after all these years, to say that to him and have him be the one stammering. I'm actually glad he reached out to me and gave me the opportunity to verbally rip him to shreds. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Jim, so let's not ever meet again. Stories like these are absolutely horrible, but I love when they have a happy ending, when the person is able to escape whatever abusive situation they're in or whatever abusive person, especially when they're able to get to that point where they can be like, you know what, fuck you and fuck everything you did to me, you're a piece of shit. All right, this last story is posted by NashGuy39. It's a couple months old, and it is titled Active Shooter in My Apartment Building. This incident took place in the summer of 2023. Last year, I transferred with my company to take a new position in a major Midwestern city. My spouse was still working and living back in California for the next few months, so I rented a studio apartment for myself in a newly renovated apartment building in a popular downtown neighborhood until we could look for a place together. The apartment was small but nice. It was in a secure building with an interior hallway and a nice downstairs lobby. I was one of the first tenants to move into the newly renovated building, and the other new tenants soon started moving in. A major advantage of this move was that it had only been a couple of hours drive from my hometown and my parents. I started my new job, and everything was going great. I was enjoying my new neighborhood, and the neighbors in the apartment building generally kept to themselves, just like I did. Then, a new guy moved in across the hall and everything changed. We'll call him David. David was a single man in his 60s and was very different from the college students and the young professionals who lived in our building. I started noticing his erratic behavior almost immediately. I would come home from work and he would be sitting in his car in our small parking lot, just staring off into the distance. We were having issues that summer with smoke clouds coming over from the vast Canadian wildfires. They were even leaving a slight dusting of ash on our cars, similar to pollen. David was convinced that someone was spraying this dust on his car and was accusing various tenants he would run into in the parking lot. He would just hoard trash in his apartment and leave trash bags in the hallway, causing a foul odor. He would also be yelling to himself in the hallway. I finally had enough and complained to the leasing office. The manager was quick to dismiss my concerns, saying that she'd been in his apartment and everything was fine. In August, my parents' 50th anniversary was coming up, and I was excited to go home and spend a weekend with them. A few days before their anniversary, my boss informed me that he would be flying in to work on an important project with me that would have us working through the weekend. I was really disappointed and felt like I was letting my parents down, but I managed to get away for a quick overnight trip in the middle of the week to see them and get back before my boss was due to arrive. I drove down and spent the night with them. The next morning, I checked my emails and I was getting ready to head back. There was an email from my apartment manager in regard to the, quote, incident the night before. The email was very vague, but it stated that a resident was dead and there would be further details coming later. My heart sank and I immediately went pale. My mind instinctively went to my strange neighbor, David. I opened up a local news app for my city, and the top story was about an active shooter in my apartment building who was killed during a SWAT team standoff the night before. Apparently, David approached my next door neighbor in the hallway with a gun and threatened to shoot him. The neighbor ran into his apartment and called 911. David also called 911 and told the dispatcher that the neighbors were hacking his phone, and if the police didn't come, he was going to start shooting people. The police came and tried to talk to David, but he had barricaded himself in his apartment and claimed to be heavily armed. The state police and SWAT teams soon arrived, and David began firing a rifle out his window at anyone he saw in the parking lot below. All of the neighbors on my floor were trapped in their apartments with no way of escape. They had to get down and barricade themselves from the gunfire. There was another building across the street with a direct line of sight into our apartment building. A police sniper took a position in the building across the street and shot David through the window. Then they flew a drone into his open window and confirmed that he was dead with the gun still in his hand. Luckily, no one else was injured. I got home later that day to a bullet-riddled apartment building, and several neighbors who normally didn't speak to each other were hugging and crying and showing each other videos of the incident from their hiding places. I've never been so lucky to have been out of town. If my boss hadn't messed up my plans, I would have been home that night. And I'm sorry David didn't get the mental health attention that he needed, but he put so many lives in danger. That has to be the absolute craziest twist of luck I've ever heard in my life. So that'll be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the Let's Not Me / sort of true crime series, there's a whole podcast where it has all my other videos where I started doing this, as well as podcasts. That's not the word I wanted to say. Playlist. There's a whole playlist, as well as a playlist I made for most of my other videos where it's like kind of like a series. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's the word I'm going to use because it's easier for me to like mentally distinguish. So yeah, if you have a specific one that's your favorite, you can find the playlists that I made on my page and you can binge them, or you can just watch any of my videos. Yeah, I'm just going to keep up to my schedule and just post every few days. And yeah, if anyone has any requests for anything, you can leave them in the comments, or you can message me and comment on my Instagram. I'm on there a lot too. I'll see that a lot sooner than I'll see YouTube comments. So yeah, with that being said, I will see you in the next video.